There was just an announcement. Once I got to getting through all your great reviews, I got a little bored with that after a little while, as you can imagine. But I read that the New York Times had this policy forever that if you have a film and you're in a legit theater and you run it for a week, they will review your film. Doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
Or the size of the film or anything. But if you manage to have it at a theater in New York City, they'll review it as their policy. So just the other day, they announced now that they're changing their policy.
Oh, I was hearing that this morning, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been kind of on the buzz.
That's such a shame. That's
Well, yeah. I mean, but then again, a lot of people spend a lot of their money or their budget to do a theatrical for a film purely to get that New York Times review. That's how powerful an asset that can be, assuming they give you a good review.
Yeah.
You're kind of banking on that too. But I mean, of course, it's nice to screen your film in a theater. Yeah. That's a dream for a lot of filmmakers.
Of course. Well, that's the point. Yeah.
Well, is it? That's yeah, but you could do that maybe in a weekend.
Yeah.
But, because the theaters are sitting empty most of the rest of the week anyway. I don't know about in Mexico City.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, I thought I'd just mention that maybe if you had a reaction to it. But it's putting you on the spot too.
Well, I heard this morning from Carlos, the head of Cinema Tropical, and he was mentioning that, and we were just saying, I mean, it seems like a shame because who's gonna pick these films and what interests are gonna be behind the choosing of these films? Are they gonna be purely commercial interests or the people that you know, and so does this give bigger films more power and independent films less, or what?
I think they already have all the power, but
yeah.
I mean, to a great degree. But the New York Times will not, of course. I mean, it's kind of ironic because the films like Avengers, doesn't matter what the review is.
Of course.
Almost.
Yeah.
I mean, it may persuade a small segment.
Yeah.
If it's a great review, opposed to a crummy review, but they've made their money. 100-fold, worldwide. So a review in the New York Times.
But it is interesting. I mean, the way that reviews are.
Yeah, it always sounds. That sounds good.
It is interesting the way that reviews are held in such high esteem in America. I mean, that is, I think, something that doesn't. It's not the case in Mexico at all, for better or worse. I think some critic giving the 2 thumbs up on your film doesn't make or break your film. So
it's a different.
I think that's a good thing.
Is that Mexican films, or are you just talking about films across the board that make it to Mexico City?
Yeah, I think.
Or Mexico.
I think films that make it to Mexico. I mean, there is I mean, especially recently, there's more a bit more weight on that with the blogs and internet and all that. But
what makes the biggest impression? Amount of advertising that exists? Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, that's what I was saying too.
Yeah.
Because a Marvel movie or any major Hollywood film has an enormous budget for marketing, and it doesn't matter where they are on the spectrum, they're going to outweigh the small independent film,
of course,
a million times. So then that's basically how films make it. And well. We start, as I often do, just in a conversation and not officially making things clear. I'm speaking with Alonso Ruizpalacios, the director of Güeros. Did I get that right? Güeros? Güeros.
Yeah.
It's Güeros.
Yeah.
Which I think it translates to heroes.
No.
It doesn't.
Not
I'm
at all.
starting at batting 1,000 here.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was my first question, and then I thought there was early on there was a conversation where the guys were saying you're a hero, anti-hero.
Yeah.
That conversation where
talk about being the anti-hero.
And the word Güeros comes up in that conversation.
Yeah. The word Güero means literally blonde or pale-skinned man.
Oh.
And it's a race term in Mexico. It would be something like whitey, like somebody calling you whitey.
It's a pejorative term.
It supposedly isn't. That's what's so interesting about it, and that's why I called the film that. It supposedly isn't. It's what if you go down to a market, somebody will call you, "Hey, güero, come," even though you're not blonde or pale skinned.
Interesting, right? Because it's evolved.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
foreigners are definitely called Güeros in Mexico, but it's a complex term. It has all these different secret meanings, and we looked into the origins of it, and we found that it comes from the Spanish conquest. In the colonial times, they used to call the Spaniards Güero with an H, which means non-fertilized egg, or pale, sickly man. So there's already something something there referring to something sick and not quite right.
Was that the motivation for the title?
I think the motivation for the title, I mean, it's a term that you hear in the city all the time. Like, people say it all the time.
It's just part of the parlance, as we say. So it's almost, you don't think about the terms anymore.
And that's what I thought was interesting about it, because it's a film about contrasts. It's a film about social, economic contrasts, political, even geographic contrasts. So I think putting a word that refers to contrast, to racial contrast, just there, it kind of gets you thinking about it.
It demands your attention on some level.
Yeah.
The film is about two friends. Well, three guys. Two friends who are roommates.
Yeah.
And in Mexico City, they're kind of what we would refer to as slackers.
Yeah.
But that's on the surface. The younger brother of Sombra.
Yeah.
Who I will say is in some ways seems to be the main character, or the maybe your avatar, if you will. He's his younger brother comes in from another part of the city because his mother's kind of thrown up her hands, because he's a troublemaker.
Yeah.
But he's also full of life and he's a highly intelligent kid. So it's probably a result of frustration in his circumstances. So actually going to his older brothers was a lifeline in a way for him, because he all of a sudden they immerse themselves in an adventure on the road. They go on a road trip,
exactly,
which is kind of on the surface to meet up with a singer and a poet who had a lot of influence on the family when years earlier, and who's sick and dying, and so they want to reach him before that, right?
Exactly.
But that's kind of the vehicle for it, no pun intended. But it goes much more. Then, like an onion, it's like an onion. We strip down the layers right over the course of the film, learning more about Sombra and Tomas and Santos, right? Who's the other kid? It takes place in 1999.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the film, it's intentionally time unspecific, and we sort of it takes the starting point for the film was the student strike in 1999 in the National University of Mexico, which lasted almost a year. It was a really, really long strike, and it's a huge university, and just what that meant for the city and for the country is huge. It's difficult to explain that outside of Mexico, because the National University is it's like the brain center of Mexico. It's the center of its intellectual life in many ways. And so for something as big as that to be completely stopped for a whole year, it had many effects economically, socially, politically.
Sure.
But I didn't want to make a documentary on this. I didn't want to be tied down by like a historical frame can be like a straitjacket, or if you it can weigh you down. So we intentionally included many details that are anachronisms in the film, such as smartphones or things that weren't around in 1999, certain music, certain cars. And we picked that carefully so that's more clear to Mexican audiences that it's not really it's 1999, but it's not really, so you don't really know when it's happening.
So, but you would still not necessarily refer to the film as a magical realism type film.
I wouldn't.
There's some sequences and moments, though, that take you out of the film.
Of course.
The fiction of the film.
Yeah, although I don't know if I'd classify them as magical realism. I think it's just film.
Good enough. I was reading some of the statement that you made in the notes for the film about the influences of the film. Can you talk a little bit about it, and what were some of your influences you brought? This is your first feature film.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I've made several shorts, and also I have a theater company, which is kind of what I do most of the time. So in a way, I mean, it was my first feature, but it didn't feel that much of like a first feature to me. It was just like a continuation of stuff I'd been doing in theater before, or in some of my short films. And so I think I approached this film with a sense of playfulness. You know, I that was one of the things that I cared a lot about, that it should be a joyous thing to make, that it shouldn't, because it is, I mean, it's long, and it's sometimes dull and really stressful to make a film, the financing and the waiting and all of that. And so, but I said, when we finally get to make it, we have to have a good time. So that was one of the main things for me, because I think that comes across in the end result. And so in that sense, I think, we took maybe from the spirit of the French New Wave. That, I mean, people have talked about that a lot, about the references of the film being an homage to the French New Wave and this and that. I don't think it's so much an homage or trying to replicate that, so much as kind of putting ourselves in a similar spirit to what I think particularly Truffaut did. Godard at first, before he took himself so seriously.
Careful around here. This is Godard.
I'm a huge fan.
I know, me too.
I just think he started taking himself so seriously.
There was a sense of it's true. There was a carefree sense to some of the narratives of his early films that disappeared later on.
It's so joyous
when he became more politically focused, I guess.
Yeah. And it's such a joy to watch those films, because that comes across also in Truffaut, that you can tell they're having fun in the set, you know, that comes across. And they're playing with form in a non-academic way. They're playing with form at the same time that they're doing it. So that's the way we made our film in many ways.
It is. And it's shot entirely in black and white.
Yeah.
And it's gorgeous, you know. And you know, I was going to actually ask you, before I forgot to ask you, when you were talking about the university as the sort of the intellectual hub of Mexico City, it sounds as though it has a left-wing tradition, as most universities seem to have, you know, in the States too. And I didn't know if but they started, but going back to at least giving people a context for 1999 as a starting point, as a jumping off point, that the school tried to, start a fee, right?
Exactly.
Which was probably too expensive for many families.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
or was it more just
it was more the symbol. I mean, what it meant
and
to
it could
start.
be a beginning too, by the way, because you start that and then they
Exactly.
pay it, then you can start charging tuition.
Exactly, and then it ends up a private university, and that's what the whole strike was about. It was to fight against the dean's decision to start charging fees, and it's the fact that it's the biggest and most important university in Mexico, and the fact that it's free is of huge importance to Mexicans, and so of course the strike started out with very legitimate, in my opinion, reasons. However, as the months passed, it was taken over by more radical factions, and it became a huge mess inside, and I think many people agree that it lasted longer than it should have. And, you know, people lost their jobs. Some people went to other universities. Many thesis projects went to, they ended up in complete oblivion.
Right.
Which is one of the scenes that I portray when Santos goes to see his biology thesis, and he finds that his plants are all dried up and stuff. So essentially what I tried to do was to look at the student movements with a sympathetic view, but not that didn't exclude some sort of criticism, which I think is healthy, and I think it's very necessary, particularly now in Mexico, politically, that the left be much more critical of itself, and so it becomes stronger, because at the moment it's a nest of corruption and authoritative.
So it lost its sense of humor in a sense. It lost its way of self-open. I mean, even if you're not self-criticizing, you should encourage the opportunity for criticism, and you have to open up the discourse and let it,
because otherwise
and had the dean, for instance, gone to the student body or what have you and said,
no, he was complete.
No, he didn't do it. I'm saying if he had, then said, look, we need to start raising money, and we can make, and have a conversation with the student body, with the community, about what to do. And this was an idea that they had, and but they wanted to kind of get it as a consensus agreement to it, and then maybe a contract to say this would be it, something like that might have gone over differently.
Yeah, maybe, but I think
it's not the point, I suppose.
Yeah, I think in that respect, I do agree with the movement that in principle it shouldn't be. It should remain a free institution, definitely. I mean, otherwise there's no chance of social mobility in Mexico.
Yeah. What is the economic? How has it shifted, if at all, since the, let's say, the 90s?
Well, I mean, I think fortunately and because of that strike, that part has remained intact, and I think it set a precedent that people will think twice before trying to change something like that.
In that way.
Yeah.
So is the university still free?
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And hopefully it will remain so.
Yeah. Well, sure. Yeah. But how about the economy of Mexico and of Mexico City?
Well, I think Mexico right now is going through its darkest times probably ever. Because,
really?
Yeah, because I'm no specialist, but I'm just a citizen who lives there and who perceives the way that the way that the country is being run has been so harmful for in every way. I mean, like economically, the country is worse than ever. There's all these cuts, these
budget cuts,
that are done discretionally and without consensus. We're going back to this authoritative regime where brave reporters are being punished by what they're saying. The violence is worse than ever. The war on drugs was a complete failure and a complete lie. And I mean, it's just, the list goes on and on. I think Mexico is definitely at its darkest right now, and and unfortunately, we that live there, we don't see clearly how we're gonna come out of this at the moment. I mean,
there's no plan. There's no clear
there isn't.
Yeah,
no, because as I was saying, the left doesn't have the answers. Like all this recent news that became international, these 43 missing students. That was a government from the supposed left party that was involved in that in Guerrero. So what's the answer? I mean, it's we don't see options at the moment. Like we're about to have our biggest elections in the history of Mexico, in that there's going to be a change of Senate and many governors of different states. So it's going to be like the biggest number of new offices.
I see.
Now on the 6th of June, and just all this stuff is coming out, and all these smear campaigns are just making it clearer to the citizens what a mess we're living in, and how and what bad choices are being offered up.
Yeah.
And just the level of corruption is unbelievable. I mean, it's endless.
Well, if you put on a scale of 1 to 10, you could say it's a 10, maybe,
Definitely.
or 9. Leave room for improvement, or the
like
opposite.
I would like to think that.
How do you make a film like Güeros? How do you in that sort of environment? First of all, is there support from local government, from the arts? Is there funding from the state?
Yeah.
Is there how does that work?
Well, there's the National Film Institute, which is being threatened right now with all these budget cuts.
Right. It just sounds so familiar.
Yeah. Well, the National Film Institute is basically one of the biggest victories of the intellectual population in Mexico. Just the way that the government was persuaded to spend more on film, and the way that the institute grew over the past, particularly 10 years. I mean, the numbers of productions in Mexico, like I think last year we were down to or up to 130 films being produced a year, versus 10 years before that it was probably 30 films a year. So I mean, that's number fantastic. is fantastic.
Yeah,
I mean, those are the numbers of France and more than Spain. So it is a big thing, and now of course they're threatening to cut on culture. Yeah, now you see on the internet all these this Churchill quote that if when he was asked what he thought about making budget cuts on culture, he said, "Then what are we fighting for?" And that's been coming up on the internet again, because it's so true. It's but anyway, I mean, the point I was getting at is that that's one of the paradoxes of Mexico, that in the middle of all this, there is still a chance for a young filmmaker who has never made a film to go ahead and make one, to have a budget, even though they're not huge budgets. You can. I mean, there's a competition every year. That's how Güeros was made. Basically a competition that they select like 5 films a year, and they finance those films.
Okay.
In 80% of their budget. So I mean, that's still a good thing that has been won in Mexico, but is being threatened right now. So even though 2 Mexicans have won the Oscar for best film in the last years. I was going to say.
Yeah, I didn't know if that had any impact on
yes and no. I mean,
this sort of success of Mexico as a filmmaking country.
Yeah, well, you would think it should, but it doesn't really. I mean, that's a problem with
right. The infrastructure is corrupt, so therefore it doesn't make a difference that much. In other words, I see. Or maybe I'm guessing. I don't know. And so let's also just a little bit about your own upbringing and what was were you raised in or around Mexico City?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Mexico City. I've lived there most of my life.
What did your parents do?
They're doctors.
You yourself play one in the film. You have a cameo.
Yeah, I have a little cameo. I think that was my way of pleasing my parents for once.
Because they wanted you to be a doctor. You're a nice Jewish boy, just like me.
Yeah.
I disappointed my parents, I'm sure, too.
I think that's that's our job as kids, to disappoint our parents.
Right. Well, are your parents around?
Yeah, they're still around. Yeah, they're both. My dad's he's a infectious disease specialist, so he's a researcher. So I think the only thing that I took from him, not the only thing, the main thing I took from him was the love of research.
Yeah,
and I think that's kind of how I approach the stuff that I do, the theater that I make, and definitely the film. There's the spirit of research and just finding out if this is going to work and not being sure, and just experimenting and seeing if it works.
Is that all, like, when you apply that to theater or film, is that done prior to production?
That's done all the way through, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think definitely until the end. I mean, there was definitely a lot of, and I don't say experimentation as in, I mean, of course it's not an experimental film. It's a completely narrative, normal film in that way. I'm not.
Well, it can be watched that way.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm not claiming to be experimental. I'm just saying that there is an experimental spirit behind the way we approach narrative and the way we solve common narrative problems.
Did it play in Mexico City, the film?
Yeah.
What do your parents think of the movie?
Yeah, they liked it. My father's always very inexpressive, so he was just like, "Well done, boy."
Oh yeah, that was as much as you got. Well, that was more than usual.
Yeah, exactly.
But you could tell he was proud.
I could tell he was proud.
Yeah, that's nice. And where did it premiere? The film premiere? I know I saw it at Tribeca Film Festival.
Yeah, it premiered
last spring.
It premiered internationally. It premiered in Berlin last year.
Okay.
And then it's been around.
Did you understand as a first-time feature filmmaker how big that was?
To
get it into that festival?
Maybe not, and I think that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were just racing to get to Berlin. We actually hadn't finished the movie. The copy that screened at Berlin wasn't the final cut. We didn't have a proper sound mix. We mixed the sound in like 3 days, and then so.
That's not untypical, I assume.
Yeah, it's not
for a festival deadline.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And but I think what that means is that you're focused on just finishing and getting there on time, and you literally arrived. We went to Berlin with a film in our backpacks, the disc. So you don't have much time to think about whether it means anything, or you just want to get it there, and it's a deadline. And so I think that's a good thing. Yeah.
You're very busy until the last minute. You don't have too much time to ruminate.
Yeah.
I agree. And then it had its U.S. premiere at Tribeca?
Yeah, last year.
And that went well?
Yeah, it went really well. Yeah, we won the award for cinematography and something else. And then it screened at the AFI festival as well. Yeah, so it's been going around a bit in the States in festivals, and now with Kino Lorber we'll be touring.
Did you
main
sell
cities.
the film at Berlin or Tribeca?
I think it was sold at Berlin to Kino. Yeah.
Okay. Just curious how that works. And now it opened at it opened up Wednesday.
Yeah.
It opened Wednesday.
The Film Forum. Yeah.
At Film Forum. How'd that go? You were there, I assume.
I wasn't there. No.
Oh, no?
I just got here yesterday.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Did you? Okay. So are you going there this weekend? Or?
Yeah. I'm going tonight, and tomorrow we're doing a Q&A. We'll see how people react to it.
Sure. I think you'll get I think people that go will, they've decided to stay home in New York this weekend just to see Güeros. So they're going to like it. They're going to like it whether they like it or not.
I hope so.
So it's there. And what's next? Is it going to have other theatricals? Or?
Yeah, it's going to, well, in other countries, it's opening in Spain. It's running right now, in England as well, in Portugal and Italy.
Wow, it's terrific.
Yeah, I mean it's a small distribution, but it's getting seen in all those places. That's a good thing. And here, as I understand it, the idea is that it's gonna go to like major cities in the commercial circuit. So I'm assuming sort of the art house circuit, though I don't really know. I mean, but we're going to LA and San Francisco and
sure. The majors. And did you screen it for the university?
Yeah, we
in
did.
Mexico City.
Yeah, we screened it actually. We did about 2 months ago. We screened it we did an open air screening in one of the places where the
film was shot,
where we shot the film. Yeah, and it was very exciting. It was,
I bet.
It was packed.
Really?
And and people were really.
I must have loved it.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great night.
What's the film festival? Is that you mentioned the Tropica one? Is it there? I know there's a very big film festival in Mexico. I know what I'm talking about, but I don't remember. I just know that it's a big festival in Mexico where a lot of films like yours would probably.
Yeah, the Morelia Film Festival. That's I think that's the biggest festival right now. And there's one in Los Cabos, and there's one in Mexico City, which is the FICUNAM, which is a smaller sort of more smaller art films.
Mm-hmm.
It's really nicely curated. Yeah, there's lots of festivals now in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's one of the as we were talking about earlier about the darkest times of Mexico. I think there's always these contrasts of these beacons of light.
Mm-hmm.
That people somehow manage to keep going in the middle of all this corruption and violence and all this. There's still all these exciting things going on culturally, in spite of staff and budget cuts.
Well, Güeros is a great export. Thank you for making such a beautiful and enjoyable, fun. It's fun too, fun film. And
I hope so.
Yeah. And again, we're talking to Alonso Ruizpalacios.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for hanging out, talking.
Thank you.